Africans at home and throughout the diaspora. Unity is strength. We've got the power.
Stop the fussing and the fighting. Now's the time to do the right thing.
We need more UNITY. Come.
Stop the fussing and the fighting.
Yeah.
Now's the time to do the right thing.
In the spirit of Umoja, embrace with love.
Let's do it right now. We've got to do it right. Stop the fussing and the fighting.
Right now.
Now's the time to do the right thing. Let's do it right now.
Yes, we are going to stop the fussing and the fighting, and we are going to do it right. This is Jamala Rogers, your host of Voices from the Battlefield. And happy Human Rights Day. So December 10th is Human Rights Day. So I guess today I'm going to be talking about that. But this is the time that I remind you that genocide is still going on in Gaza, that we still have a pathological liar and a 34 count felon in the White House who is protecting pedophiles. So sometimes we need that reminder because there's lots of things going on in our lives, but that's who's at the helm of this country right now, which is why there's so much havoc. And we're going to talk more about that havoc and the human rights abuses right here in this country. But yeah, there's a lot going on. I just want to say before we jump into this that in spite of all the intimidation, threats, legal challenges, we turned in 305,000 signatures to reverse that illegal redistrict map that the state has done in Missouri. So
All right.
shout out to everybody who participated in that, signed, got signatures, but they are not finished with us, y'all. So we cannot let our guard down. But it's a victory as we see it right now, and we're going to keep the struggle up. Today, I have two guests, and I was thinking about the three of us, and I was thinking if we just change the name on top of the bios, we basically have the same kinds of activities, the same trajectory. And I'm like, except for I can't carry a note in a bucket, so I can't claim what Jaribu does.
And
But
that's only
all,
Jaribu.
Well, if that's the only thing you can't do, that's all right.
so we have some sister warrior pioneers up in here today that I am so happy to have together. I don't know if I ever had y'all together like this, but yeah. And, Jaribu, we go way back to the Congress of African People. So that's
Yes, we do.
back in the 70s. And so we've been through a whole lot. But again, all of it is similar kinds of things, the fight for self-determination, for Black political power, for women's rights. We're all feminists. Loretta Ross is a co-founder of the first rape crisis center in DC. So
Wow.
all of us have co-founded transformative organizations. You, Jaribu, started in 1996, the Mississippi Workers Center for Human Rights, and also She-Rock. So we have been a part of on the cutting edge of human rights, and I am thrilled to have both of you all here. We have podcasts, we're prolific writers. We have been getting out the word about human rights for decades now, and so I am honored and thrilled to have you both on the show. So welcome.
Thank you.
I just want to
And I
remind
do.
you, Jamala, we met at the founding conference of MBUF.
That's right. That's right. So
Right.
1980,
Wow.
1980 in New
Wow.
York.
Okay.
Yeah,
That is really
absolutely.
where exactly. People
Yeah.
have to
So
remember that we were a part of that.
yeah. So we've been in circles. Sometimes they intersect. Sometimes we go past each other, but we've always been there. So you're right. Absolutely. I just want to ask you all, how are you all personally doing? Because before we went on air, I was telling Loretta that sometimes people see us as the go-to people when they need strength and support, but they don't ever think we need strength and support. We don't need somebody to cry on, or we don't need somebody to pour our hearts out to. So how are you all personally doing, spiritually, socially? How you be?
Well, I can say that the work has sustained me through some things. It has been a righteous distraction. for some of the heartache and things that we've gone through as as a blood family. Um, and so there's that, and there's always the aftermath and the continuing journey with grief and recovery from that. Uh, but I'll say that I'm just feeling really good about resisting and feeling like we're coming back around to the understanding that we have to do that, that no status quo is beneficial to us. And so I'm inspired by some of the things that young people are doing. I'm inspired by folks who are willing to take on the duopoly and the parties in general, and some of the things, some of the contradictions you just mentioned, genocide earlier. And of course, some folks are hiding, but I'm proud of those who are not hiding. So I feel pretty good. I feel like in the 30 years that we've been alive and doing this work in Mississippi, I never thought I'd be here this long. This is the home of my ancestors, both immediate and really ancestral ancestors. My mother's people and my dad, all of my dad and his people are from the Mississippi Delta. And so are my mother's people from Shaw, Mississippi. My dad's from Deason, Mississippi. But I never lived here and always thought I'd come, do a stint, and then head back to New York and do police brutality, police misconduct, George Floyd type law. And so when the bug bit me and I made the decision to stay, I'm just amazed that it has been almost 30 years that I've been in this godforsaken and also wonderful place at the same time. Like Loretta said, it's both. Of course, there's challenges, but it is a beautiful state. And of course, we have some of the most amazing struggles that have ever taken place. We have Fannie Lou Hamer, we have Medgar Evers, we have so much to be grounded in. So I'm looking forward and looking up. I won't deny that I get discouraged sometimes, but I think keeping on going is what helps me to know that I can still make a contribution and not going to be put out to pasture. My organization doesn't have forced retirement, thankfully. So I can keep working as long as I feel good. And I'm going to just do that. So, yeah. And happy to be on today and reminiscing, blast in the past, good work, always good feelings, always about the two of you.
Yeah. And how are you doing, Loretta? Because you're in an environment where you around the future of our country, and so you get to see where the thinking is and the practices and the worldviews of young people. So, and I've talked to a number of my folks who are in the academy, and sometimes they have horror stories to tell about. And I'm like, okay, I don't know that I need to hear that because this is where we're gonna like land our plans for the future, and so we got to get them ready wherever they are. So, how are you doing, both as a person and then as somebody in the academy?
Well, I have to start out by saying that teaching up at Smith College is the last thing that I ever thought I'd be doing, teaching anywhere, because I didn't graduate with a bachelor's degree till I was 55 years old, because I was a teen mother and, the stories of what we go through to survive. So I worked in the nonprofit world until 2012. And so when Hampshire College reached out and asked me if I would come teach, nobody was more surprised than me that I have a bachelor's degree, and I just got that a few years before. I thought they had to have PhDs and all of that to teach. And so I'm really proud of the fact that at four colleges so far have hired me to teach my course called White Supremacy in the Age of Trump. And those are the colleges that are brave, that are on the front lines of wanting their students to know about fascism and how to fight it.
That's
And
amazing. Yeah.
that is a privileged position to be in. But personally, it's my Black feminist practices that have gotten me this far, because you spoke of my early days. Actually, I'm not the co founder of the Rape Crisis Center, I was just as executive director, but that's a small correction. And poor Nakinji just died a couple of months ago,
Yes.
and we had a big memorial service for her. I
I
sent
did
you,
not know
I
because I
sent
had been
you an
trying to call
email.
Yes.
her.
I sent you an
Yes.
Ah.
email. I wanted to make sure you knew.
Yes.
I
We
didn't
got
get
that
the
Mm.
email or
word.
a text. I said all the Inbuff sisters
Hmm.
heard about it. But
Yes.
anyway,
Mm.
Because Mackenzie's the one that brought me to the Rape Crisis Center after she left the Black Panthers. That's where she went. But I'm invoking her name to talk about our practice. One of the things that Black feminism teaches us is to always have that intentional support circle of sisters who's been through stuff like you've been through stuff, who have committed for our lifetime to be there for each other. And so every last Monday of the month, those of us who cut our teeth on activism in Washington, D.C., even though we live all over the world right now, every fourth Monday of the month, we have we call it our Black Women's Self Health Call, where we come together and spend 2 or 3 hours just checking in on each other, supporting each other as best we can, discharging about the pain and the agony of fighting white supremacy wherever we are and wherever we've ended up 40 years later. And that is my lifeline. That is my
Yeah.
lifeline to I think every young activist needs to start forming that permanent support
Hmm.
circle now, because the people you've been through stuff with, you can intentionally keep them in your life for the rest of your life. We bonded over the assassination of Yolanda Ward back in November 2nd, 1980. And remember, she was with the MBuff youth
Oh,
Yes,
group
yep,
yes.
at the
yep,
time,
yep. Doing housing. Mm-hmm.
doing housing and prison abolition work and all of that. I'm convinced that her exposing the corruption in the housing market is what got her killed.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Tracing the bribes and stuff that were being
Mhm.
paid off. But anyway, when you go through something like that, you form lifelong relationships. But all relationships are like house plants. This is what Mackenzie used to say. You have to water them to keep them alive.
True that. True
And that's
that.
what I talk
Give
about in
give some
teaching activism.
sunshine every once in a while. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm very proud of our Black Women's Self-Help Collective. We give
Yeah.
each, we just check to see who's dealing with blindness, who's dealing with,
Mm.
you know, living in senior housing, who came. I had a girlfriend that she couldn't make a move in her life financially because she owed a jive $700 on a car that she needed to sell. I mean, just sometimes it's just
Yeah.
something little
Yeah.
Yeah.
like that that can
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
everybody's life. But Black women, we have a tendency to keep these kinds of trials and tribulations to ourselves
That's right.
and don't expect anybody to be there to help us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so setting up those circles for yourself means that you know that you're not in this by yourself when it even comes to like a $700 bill that is keeping you up at night.
Mm.
Right. But I think, Loretta, to your point about forming those kind of relationships, I see the challenge that young women have right now to do that because they've been basically socialized to be individualistic and
Right.
to rely on stuff, this little
True.
device. So when they talk about they have so many friends, they talk about the likes that they get on this thing, which are not, you're not going to talk about fake. That's not a real relationship. And I think when I look at the young people, they are yearning for that kind of relationship that's nurturing, that's non-judgmental, that's that's protective. And I think we're going to have to do a lot to recreate that in some of these spaces because what they've been dealing with is like, and now AI is here. You can create a thing that's human like that can talk to you and know and give you answers that sound like they real for your life. I mean, this is some scary stuff. So I agree. And one of the things that I saw, taking a quote from you, Jaribu, that I think applies to all of us and that we would agree with, and that is a love for our people and a profound hatred for the systems of oppression. That's what keeps us
Yes.
going. I pulled that out
Yes.
from an interview somebody did with you,
Yes.
Jaribu. And I know I've
Yes.
heard Loretta say this in so many ways. You have to have a profound love for Black people to
Hmm.
be in this for the
That's
long
right.
haul.
That's
And
right.
so sometimes people drop in because it looks like something sexy, and then they say, "Oh shit, this is some hard work," and then they're gone. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
but a profound love And just like that, you have a profound love. You have to have a profound hate for the systems of oppression that are keeping your people down. So that's what sustains me too, because people always ask that question when they do an interview. What sustains you? How you been in this so long? Well, I always say we ain't free, are we? We
No,
ain't
we
been
not.
liberated, have we? So yeah, so I still have to keep going until that happens or until I can't do it anymore. So
I don't know how to do the work with sustainable strategies. Because, see, I think life is about joy. So if you don't balance the hard work that you do with intentional strategies of joy and replenishment, you are going to burn out. That's what I
hmm
see a lot of young people do. They come in and they work furiously, and then within a few years, they're burnt out because they don't know when to turn that consciousness on and off so that
Right.
they
yeah,
can actually enjoy going to the picnic without doing a political analysis of where potato salad comes from. I mean,
Right. No, no, it's
really.
true. That's true. But then also just to add to that and support what Loretta just said, I find in the work we're doing, and we work with young people also, mostly college educated young people or people going to law school or graduate school, our internship program, the Fannie Lou Hamer Emerging Leaders Program, which also is almost 30 years old. And what I find, honest to goodness, there's a class struggle going on all the time. And
absolutely.
this past summer was the most refreshing summer for us. Why? Because Denise Perry was the one that brought it to my attention and suggested, why don't you look at the community college and recruit from there? And what a change, not having just the 4 year Ivy League entitled types. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but that was the flavor of what was happening. And when we bring in working class youth who had to struggle to get through the 2 years and hope that they can get into a 4 year school to finish, that's a difference. And it really affords you a different conversation altogether, because they've had to go through something to get what they are trying to get, and they have a different perspective often on that. So I say mix it up. Yeah, we're
Mix it
gonna
up.
we it's unavoidable to have the graduate students and the law students come in, but we definitely need to mix that up and bring in young people who haven't been to college, people who
Right.
been to a trade school, maybe didn't go to anything,
Yeah.
but need
Yeah.
to understand their role and what they can contribute to the upliftment of our people. And I just think it's all of the things that you all mentioned, the AI, it's the addiction to the tablet, not being able to hold an intelligent conversation. I know even with my own grandchildren, when I ask a question, they just give me a yes or no answer. They don't expand on it. You have to go further and go deeper. And these are kids who are privileged, who have been, able to go to the finest schools and learn everything. It's not that they're not smart, but they're socialized not to have interaction with humans.
hmm
And that is a
Right.
problem, and I'm
That's a
resisting.
serious problem.
Yeah, I'm resisting the AI to the extent where a board member of ours said, well, we need to really get deeply involved with AI. I said, we need to balance that though. We need to balance it because I don't ever want to think about replacing human beings with any kind of machine or apparatus or data or whatever. But that's what we're up against. We're fighting for people to be authentic. We're fighting for folks to take hold of these struggles and to learn about the history. Maybe if they knew more about the history, they would
Yeah.
understand their role as young people in this revolution. A lot of young people don't even know the history of our fight started always with young people. All of us on this screen, we were teenagers when we started. Loretta, you probably were younger than I was when I started. I
16 when
got
I got
hooked.
first tear gas.
Yep. I got hooked on the campus, Central State University, historically black college. Till then, I was a knucklehead. And even when I got to the campus, I was a knucklehead and had to learn who was El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. I didn't, and then when they said Malcolm X, I still didn't know. So I'm saying that to say we need to really make sure our young people know the history of this fight because it was all started. Every one of these fights was started by young people. And Loretta, you mentioned being 15 years old. I think about the young girl who should have gotten all the recognition for starting us out with not giving up her seat. She was what, 15?
Yeah.
Claudette,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
Rosa. And she
Covert.
defiantly said, no, I'm not giving up my seat at 15 years old. So, yeah.
So I
Can
just
I
want to
also
add
throw
to.
one
Go
question
ahead.
in here? How do
Yeah.
you have a solution or an answer for the kids, for the black kids who say, I don't want to take up the struggle against racism anymore. I just want to live my life? Because I get that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Eh,
that that goes back to the addition I was going to make to what Jaribu said when she talked about it's a class struggle, because I think for all the work that we do is grounded in the working class, particularly the black working class. In fact, that's in the mission for the Organization for Black Struggle. It's about the black working class. And so
Yes.
that's really what keeps you grounded. But I see the class divide in what you're saying, but I also see it in uh, the social movements, the folks
Mm-hmm.
who sort of had a different idea about, a little bit more privilege. They're not looking at the organizing the way folks
No.
who don't went to school. And so when people think it's a either an ego issue or maybe even a generational issue, really it's a class issue. It's about a
Yes.
worldview. And so to your point, Loretta, the thing that I talk about, because it reminds me of when people tell black kids you can be anything you want to be. We shouldn't be telling our people that, because that's a bunch
Because it's
of
not
lie.
true. Yeah.
It's a lie. It's a lie. And what I tell people, you can be what you want to be when we get this system where it's fair and equitable for women, for LGBTQ people, for poor people. Until then, wherever you go, no matter how you think you're ascending, you're going to have a struggle.
That's
So I
right.
remember one of the young women that was in our youth organization went to work for a corporation after college, and got really trashed. I mean, they had her training people and then wouldn't promote her. They had, I mean, it was just. I said, well, this is the world that we live in, and that's why these systems of oppression have to be dealt with, and you have to be aware that they all around you. You were born into it, and so if you act like those are oblivious or inconsequential or don't impact you as a person, then you really are going to be vulnerable to all of the stuff that they got going. And I think I see a lot of that happening right now because people don't want to admit that they're going to have to do something. And if you don't do something, then you just subject to whatever the whims are of the capitalists.
No, it's true. And what Loretta described, that mindset is ingrained in the student types in particular, that I've seen, where they actually look through you when you're telling them about struggles that were waged, or you're telling, like I had a law student who's from Greenwood, Mississippi, the same county where Emmett Till was lynched, LaFleur County, and we were going to Fannie Lou Hamer's gravesite, and she asked me, well, I don't know of Fannie Lou Hamer. She's a second year law student from the Delta, and she had never heard of Fannie Lou Hamer. Another student told me that, oh, no, a staff person ordered some clocks, and the clock was named Cheney. And I looked at the clock, I said, oh, wow, what does that make you think of? And they said, Dick Cheney. I said, no, I was trying to get him to say James Cheney, damn it. The civil rights worker that was slain. And she was from Meridian, Loretta. She was from where James Cheney was from. Her parents knew James Cheney's family. And the first thing that came out of her mouth was Dick Cheney when she saw the name on the clock. So I'm like, wow, is this hopeless? Or, I mean, are we going to have a chance here to get people to come back to the reality? Unless our people are doing well, you ain't going to be doing well. Everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. How many times have folks gone into these jobs and been downsized out and been traumatized because they believed in a system that never had coverage for them anyway? The reason why we don't get traumatized is because we know that we have nothing coming. Anything, it's all temporary. The sheepskin, the bar card, I know they can take that shit in a moment. They will take it. They will get sick and tired of hearing the rhetoric and the talk and whatever I'm saying about Palestine and genocide and whatever I'm talking about. They'll say, okay, that's enough for you. That's enough for you, and they'll take it. So it's not like it's permanent. Like we have these trappings that we can rely on forever. And what she says is true. They're thinking it if they don't say it out loud. At least they say it out loud where you can hear it and take it on, because some of them are thinking exactly what Loretta said. They're thinking, well, what does this have to do with me? I'm not, I just want to get mine. I just want to, get my education and do well. I want to do better in life. Like one girl told me, she said, well, I don't have anyone in my family I can relate to because I'm the first person to go to college. I said, what about your mama who paying for you to go, who probably scrubbed some floors for you to go? So you have to put reality back in these people's heads because they're thinking that they are special, right? And that they're entitled and that nobody got them there. That's what
Right.
gets me when they say things like what Loretta said. It really irks me. And I have to really just hold back and try to be patient because I'll run everybody away. Because
You
I
got to call
really
them
hate
in. Now,
hearing
I
that
wrote a book about
selfish.
calling in.
Right. I was
Yeah.
just getting ready to say we have to call those people in. But here's the thing about that. When I hear that coming from young people, particularly college students, I know where they got it from. They got it from
Oh
their
yeah.
parents.
Oh
Their
yeah.
parents told them, you go up on that campus and don't be getting in that black stuff. You there for education
Even
so
if
you can
they
get
were
a
in
good
it,
job.
even if
Exactly.
they used to
Exactly.
be in it themselves, they will
Exactly.
say that. Yes,
Exactly.
and
Don't
they'll
go up there
say
getting into that black
that's
stuff. You
right.
can join a Greek organization, but don't be joining that black stuff.
That's
And so
right.
I always go back to when Loretta was teaching us the human rights classes to be educators, and we talked about everybody, black people in particular, are a paycheck away from being homeless,
Always.
unemployed, and I added to that. The other thing you say is an accident away from being permanently disabled or partially
That's right.
disabled, and I added an encounter with a police will get you in prison. So
Or
we are
killed. Yep.
so are killed. So we are so vulnerable, and we act like this is a society that has a history of protecting us.
That's
Even
right.
when we're doing the right things, we are unprotected.
We are
And so,
unprotected.
but to your point, Jaribu and Loretta, I say that's a conversation that needs to be had, and that's as organizers, that's where we are. We start where people are, trying to educate them. Sometimes it works, or sometimes down the line they might have the aha moment. Oh, that's what Miss Ross was trying to tell me.
Right,
Oh,
right, right.
so I appreciate when they say it. It's troubling, but you have to know what you're dealing with. You have to know why the movement is going in a certain direction, because these are the people who have a certain view. They can often get into positions of influence, and so there you have it. So
But I
when
want
you're
to
talking
speak up
about,
in defense of the young people.
okay,
Because, see, because I'm in touch with them all the time, like Jaribu is. And they're carrying a whole lot,
Yeah.
right? They don't have any of the certainties that we could take for granted.
Hmm.
For example, when we chose to stand up and fight against white supremacy, we were seen as heroes by our communities for doing
That's
so.
right. That's right.
Right now, if they do it, that parents might think that they're betraying their dreams.
Right.
That they end up with a doctor or a lawyer who's going to make a lot of money. um, they can't trust information that they're getting because they're being blizzarded with so much information. They went
fake
through
information.
COVID where they didn't have a chance to establish any real in-person relationships. So these parasocial relationships are all they got. And if they say the wrong thing to any one of them, they will be canceled and have 10,000 people talking badly about them. At least we know if somebody was going to talk bad about us, it'd be limited to the one or two, not 10,000.
Right, right, right. And we could confront them. We could confront them, right? We can't confront
Right,
10,000
right.
people.
So I just want to speak up in defense of the, but the
Yeah.
thing that most troubles me is that even the ones with passion for justice and human rights and are trying to be their ancestors' dreams, they don't know how to handle that passion with compassion.
Hmm.
They turn
Hmm.
on each other in a heartbeat,
In a
girl.
heartbeat.
Yeah.
In a
If
heartbeat.
you don't know the latest this, if you don't say the right thing, if you got the wrong t-shirt on, if you don't speak up properly about asada or whatever they don't know, they get punished for not knowing.
Right.
Is and so they enter the movement with the expectation that everybody's already grown and should know everything they need to know. And if they don't know something, they pounce on them like vultures because
Yeah.
that competitive, organizing and competitive politics, which I thought was the worst of the old ML days, the old Marxist Leninist groups were the
Yeah.
ones who were like
Yeah.
so viciously like
Right.
that. But now, honey, the young people are having to negotiate a totally different terrain. And I want to just offer some understanding. We need to make sure that they understand the importance of radical love to accompany that radical politics that they have.
Yes.
Because they don't have a lot of
Especially.
Absolutely.
self love
Absolutely.
and they don't have a real way of conveying it to others, even their own families.
Right.
Right. And I don't want to it to be misinterpreted that I think all of us work with young people and we've had the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think for us, we truly do understand all the nuances with what they've gone through because I believe they get socialized in ways that we never have. And so sometimes adults don't even understand what
Hmm.
young people are going through. So to your point, Loretta, they are holding a lot of stuff that we didn't even have to worry about. I was telling somebody the other day that in my high school, we didn't have drugs. You got in trouble if you were found smoking cigarettes in the bathroom. We didn't have like you got to watch everybody on the corner because you wait for a pedophile or somebody might be kidnapped. All of those stressors, the adults in our community made sure that we didn't have to deal with. I didn't see somebody smoking marijuana till I went off to college. So I didn't because people protected us from all of that. That the kind of protection that we had in the community that we had is very different now. And what looks like community for us, the kind of cohesion that we had where there was common values, that's gone. People are living
Right.
here, there. Sometimes siblings don't even go to the same school. And so where do you find community? And
Yeah.
that to me is where they're getting lost. There's
Hmm.
there's no anchoring for them that they can feel comfortable and secure with.
Right.
And it's not even enough adults who understand it enough to help them wade through it or navigate through some of those turbulent waters. And I really feel bad for young people
Yeah.
now because I think
I do too.
mine was so carefree. We
Hmm.
we just like
Yeah.
moved and
Right.
even when we
It.
didn't know what we were doing, there were adults, elders in the movement would say, "Hold up, now that may not be
Right.
the best thing for you to do."
Right. Yeah.
But that's
No,
not the case
you're right.
now.
Yep. And when you think about your college experience, I know for us, we always had revolutionaries to look up to. If we didn't know them personally, we could read about them, or we could hear on the radio speeches, and and sort of craft our lives based on that type of heroic response to the system. But most of the people that are leading our children now are pleaders, Uncle Tom's, Aunt Sally's, and we need to call forth those terms because they are still there with us, these sellouts on these campuses. Why only one historically black college had an encampment, and that was Howard, against genocide? We would never have allowed that to happen back in the day. When Orangeburg massacre occurred, I was a sophomore. We did our own candlelight vigil. They were still talking about Kent State. We talked about Orangeburg and how three boys tried to integrate a bowling alley and they were assassinated. And we did a vigil. And when Dr. King was assassinated, we marched 3 miles. So, where are the adults guiding young people today and encouraging them to be revolutionaries? I just see these backwards pleaders in positions of power in these institutions pushing our children toward being Negroes and toward being consummate Negroes, and consummate Negroes who are selfish and self entitled and don't even reach back or think about. So that's there's a war for their minds. There's a war for them to get back to who their history, the history and their legacy calls them to do. It's a war because and then you look at the Congressional Black Caucus. I mean, who are the leaders that we can look up to? That we can send our children out and say, oh, you want to intern with this person, you want to extern with this person. And meanwhile, people like Hakeem Jeffries and others, they're getting millions from Israel,
Yeah, the APAC,
supporting
almost
the
all of them are getting
genocidal
APAC
lobby.
money.
All
Yeah,
of them,
yeah,
all of them. So who are the people that we can show them and say, this is what? And they know it's a jive thing when you try to tell them, oh, your elders are going to look out for you. Your elders, you should be looking up to them. They know that's not true. So how do we combat that? Because there's not a lot. There are not a lot
And
of Lorettas. There are not a lot of Jamalas. You know, I mean, where do they get their strength from and their examples from? Because it is a cesspool. I mean, when we were forced, when Kamala Harris was forced on us, the cop from California was forced, literally forced on people. I had people who I thought were revolutionaries chastising me, warning me not to get on my platform and attack this cop from California. And then any other day, they would have been right there talking about the duopoly and the contradictions, but no, so afraid of what was coming that they lost their radical edge if they ever had it. So I can see the frustration with young people because I myself, as an old person, I'm frustrated too. I really am
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
see people capitulating and, as we say here in the South, crawfishing back and justifying a lot of stuff so they can reconcile it in a way.
And so, Jaribu, I just want to interject the fact that we are, all of us are about human rights, and that seems to be very elusive in this country. Most people don't even think human rights apply to the U.S. They look
That's
across the
right.
waters and say, "Oh, China is in violation," or Guatemala is in violation. Somehow they don't connect human rights here, and that has been, I think, our struggle to really connect that and say that those laws that are on paper are just that. They're paper laws that, at a
That's right.
political whim, they could be gone. That's why we're still fighting for voting rights. So I just want to add to the conversation, what is different now that you have MAGA in charge and they are destroying everything democratic, everything that looks black. We were kind of joking before we went on air about people upset about the fact that the national parks were going to be closed on MLK and Juneteenth, but open on Trump's birthday. So is that something we want to get distracted by? Or do we want to add that to the accumulated offenses and violations of this administration? And how do we cut through that to let people know that no, we can't wait until the midterms because we don't know what's going to happen. We have to be engaged right now on many different levels if we are to turn this thing around. Because what they're doing now is basically going to impact at least a couple of generations in terms of what they've done. So, how are human rights faring under MAGA? And
but
I
see,
think if we are able to kind of bring those together, we could do two things at one time. We could really talk about how to assess the political conditions that we're in right now, but also bring in human rights as one of the lens that we need to be looking at some of these struggles from.
but the whole human rights framework was created to fight fascism. I mean, let's be clear. It came about. I mean, and obviously, human rights was not created in 1948. I mean, Frederick
Right.
Douglass talked about human rights, and a whole lot of people talked about human rights for centuries before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was written. So I'm not dating it as beginning there. But when the world community watched what Nazi Germany had done to Jewish people and to Black people and people who were queer and disabled in terms of the genocide against them, they recognized that what Nazi Germany had done was immoral, but it was not illegal because countries have a distressing way of legitimating immoral actions, the same way the United States legitimated slavery and genocide, the same way that Trump is legitimating attacking Venezuela and the ICE arrest. They have a way of legitimating immoral actions. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was written to put guardrails up, to say no matter where you're born, what you're born, who you're born, what your religion is, no matter who, simply because you're a human being, you have certain rights that countries should not violate. And we're going to set up these mechanisms to try to hold people accountable, whether they're individuals, governments, or corporations that violate your human rights. Now, obviously, this is an imperfect system. We're a long way from having any country in the world actually protect human rights. But if you don't have a vision of what you're fighting for, you're going to fall into the trap of fighting for equal opportunity to oppress others like you've been oppressed.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
No,
that's
that's
the truth.
true. That's true. And you're
And so
you're
we
also
have
going to
to have
find,
that
yeah.
human rights vision out
Mhm.
there to set standards for how human beings should be treated, both morally, economically, politically, legally, electorally, all those kinds of standards. Just getting the standard. That's why human rights education is so important. Because people don't even know they deserve their human rights. They don't know what they are, and they can't fight for human rights if they don't know what they are and they don't think they deserve them.
Mm-hmm.
I I haven't been at the National Center for Human Rights Education since 2007. Do you know I still get calls from people asking me, where can I get those little blue booklets y'all distribute?
Yeah.
Wow, the passport.
I got
Yeah.
one last week. Last
Right.
week I got a phone call
Right.
because I put
Yeah, we used
my
to use
home
those
number in
for
those
what we
books
give
because I
out
didn't
in
have an
truck.
office at the time. It
Yeah.
was a kitchen table operation. You know,
Yeah.
people are still calling me looking for those little blue booklets. So we
Right.
have started something, and it
Yes.
still
Yes.
it's a slow burn, but it's a
Hmm.
steady burn,
Yeah.
and it is transforming how people think that they deserve dignity, how they
Mhm.
deserve respect, how they deserve to be treated. And of course, we're
Right.
up against the most ruthless people in the world, but we got a vision that is greater than anything they can imagine because we're creating a world where everybody is included and respected. People are
Yeah.
about, what about the attack on DEI and race and LGBT? I said, honey, that's their problem. They only see people according to labels. Black people
Yeah.
birth humanity, and we evaluate people based on their humanity. You know,
Right.
we created these suckers, and now we're
Hmm.
gonna have to save them.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
because
it's
our
true.
vision is
And
so big,
yeah.
they can't even imagine that we see that little light skinned cousin and that little dark skinned cousin and that little queer cousin and that disabled cousin, but they all cousins.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's
Yep.
true that one of the frustrations, I guess, that I have with this moment is people are really, I don't know, suffering some kind of historic amnesia, thinking that wow, we're in such a terrible place right now. This is horrible. This administration is so awful, like the other ones were good, and ignoring the fact that before this monster, and I don't want to dehumanize him too much because then we make him look like he's untouchable and nothing can happen to him. But before him, of course, there were other forms of repression and oppression that we faced. One party that Black folks tend to favor financed genocide for 8 years. So, where I am in this is I hear the narrative where people are saying we are in a moment where our democracy is under attack. And I'm questioning, like Langston Hughes, was there ever a democracy, number one? And what was under attack for them has always been under attack for us. So I struggle with trying to make sure that I continue to understand that, yeah, this moment is horrific, but we've been here before and we have dealt with these types of issues before. And sometimes this may seem more aggravated and more agitated and more, I guess aggravated and agitated might be the wrong words, but might be more exaggerated. But I do see, like, especially the left, since I'm kind of with them a lot. And some people on the left, I really question where they're going. We used to call it tailgating, tailing the bourgeois systems, both parties. And what is the outcome for us, not even mentioning capitalism or US imperialism, or not looking through the lens of these systems and trying to talk about dismantling them, but talking about how can we peacefully coexist with these horrific systems. So I guess political education is something that I'm thinking about more and more as implementing and institutionalizing within our youth framework as well, not just sending them out to read these articles or talk about what's happening in Mississippi or how workplaces in Mississippi harken back to the auction block. Only thing different is they pay them a few meager wages. But how do we make sure that people understand that it is in fact a system that we are trying to overthrow, and that the human rights framework is part of our recreating or redefining what humanity should look like and what human beings deserve. But we also have to talk about how do we dismantle those systems that keep us from even getting anywhere near recognition of our humanity. So I guess I'm just trying to marry up those two things and figure out where we are and I do think political education is the big thing that we need. We used to have study groups. And yeah, I was in one of those ML groups after we left Black nationalism, though I never really left Black nationalism. I confess, I've never left it, but I was a Marxist Leninist too. And I noticed that there was a give and take. You had to choose between your blackness and whether you're going to follow Marx or Lenin. So I don't want to do that, obviously, but I do have some frustration about where we are in terms of clarity, in terms of the systems, and when you reach out to folks and you talk about the status quo in a way where you want to see it gone, you have people even on the left, saying things like, well, first we got to talk about getting rid of Trump, and then, because the administration we had before was so much better, and that's just really not true. It's not true. So how do we deal with that? I'm just I don't know.
So I think when and this is to both of y'all's earlier points, that when you humanize people, and I'm saying this because I basically organize black folks, and particularly when I'm organizing black young people, is that as an organizer, your first responsibility is to understand the systems of oppression. If you
That's
don't
right.
understand that, then you just going to be in a circle, dealing with reforms. And so that's okay in the interim, but ultimately, what's the vision? And for some of us, it's a socialist vision. And so,
Mm-hmm.
how do you get there? Is
Right.
not the way that we're seeing some of this stuff play out. And so
Right.
one of the things of even having a discussion around how do you elevate human rights in the age of MAGA is we still don't see each other as worthy of fighting, worthy of sacrifice, worthy of struggle. So you'll have an incident where there's a police shooting, and then the media will throw all kind of stuff about like this person's background, and then people start
Right.
backing up. Well, maybe. No, I don't care what he did. He didn't deserve to be
Didn't
shot down like a
deserve that.
dog.
That's right.
So I think, I mean, you made a point about this, Loretta. The humanizing aspect of this is, to me, probably one of the greatest outcomes of the human rights education is if we don't see each other worthy enough or that they deserve human rights, then it's hard to think about where we'll be 10, 20, 30 years from now. Just because I think the oppression is going to get worse and the isolation is going to get worse. Um, because right now, what the Trump folks are doing is to make our lives so miserable that all we can do is think about survival. And so at some point, you got to say, I get that, and I'm struggling with these two jobs, putting them together so I can have one decent job, but I'm going to free up enough time to fight for my liberation. I'm going to free up enough time to leave something for my children or my grandchildren. And I think that kind of long range thinking we've almost abandoned because everything is like in the now, in the here, and we got
That's
to do
yeah,
this
yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that we have to back up and take another approach. I actually slightly disagree with both of you because I call myself a recovering Marxist. Went there, did that. But I've never been convinced that any theory that a white man has come up with is going to save humanity.
Oh no, no,
I,
nope,
I have I have come to that
nope.
conclusion that we're going to have to pull out our ancient African principles to save humanity, because all of these things that we have tried to learn and adapt from these European philosophies are failures,
That's right.
and I haven't seen any evidence that they work
Nope,
anywhere.
nope. In
And
fact, we left the Marxist Leninist organization that we were part of because they couldn't deal with the national question. They wanted to talk about workers of the world unite, but they didn't want to talk about black liberation. They didn't want to talk about colonialism. They didn't want to talk about neocolonialism. They only wanted to talk about workers of the world unite, and really they were talking about white workers of the world
right,
unite.
so I'm saying that my vision as it is now, because it's hopefully I'll live long enough to evolve to a new one as well, is that what we have failed to help people understand is that yes, there's race, class, gender, citizenship, age, all the different isms that we are really good at educating and organizing around. But you know what we are bad at organizing around? the diversity that we have the most difficulty handling, even within the Black community? Experiential diversity. Every
Mm-hmm.
human being has been through something different, and their complex life is just as valuable as your complex life. And because they've been through something different, they're going to think differently about damn near everything than you think differently about. And once we get good and expert at handling experiential diversity, that's when we're going to build the movement that everybody is included in on. And because see, and I think it's in every human being, because I love the way that almost every human being, not all, but almost every human being, when there's a natural disaster, like an earthquake or a fire or a tornado, they run and say, do you need help? And can I help? They don't stop to say, did you vote for MAGA? Did you do this? Who you sleeping with? We ain't asking none of those questions because that's just that human to human Ubuntu connection that is ancient and African. And I'm just saying our struggle now needs to be around helping people pull that from within themselves around man made disasters too, like poverty and racism, imperialism and genocide and immigration abuse, because it's already there. Why can't we help people learn how to use it for man made disasters? Because we use it for the natural disasters and that's why I'm moving towards a more positive vision of building on what people can do, how people can show up and present the best of themselves instead of being encouraged to always think the worst of themselves and others.
And others.
Well, that
And
is a
so what
really that's really aspirational and almost utopianistic for me. I'm not saying I don't agree with it, but where I'm located, I don't see that reality at all. I don't see the humanity that I search for in some of these folks. I see them
Even in
crawling
natural
on their bellies,
disasters,
acting like some damn savages. Even in natural disasters, we just had the tornadoes, completely segregated in terms of the relief systems, in terms of who helped who. The white congressman in the area where people's homes were leveled didn't show up, said that he had a scheduling conflict. And these are black people who are your constituents, because they don't have nobody else to vote for but your white ass, and you don't show up for them. But if something happens in white Amory, Mississippi, you're there. So but I hear you, Loretta, really, and we're always the ones, aren't we? The ones always responsible for humanizing everyone else, for seeing the humanity. Oppressed people are always the ones with that burden, but the folks who oppress us, they're never challenged, really, call forth any humanity that they might
well, see,
have.
that's why we got to pull off this soft underbelly. Because I have a different strategy for the puppeteers than the puppets. Because I eat up the puppeteers' asses. That's why I fight fascism. But I am going to offer grace and understanding to the puppets because I want to peel off those puppets, weaken their base, make them understand that they can be better than these socially constructed, racialized roles they've been assigned to.
Well, good luck with that and keep me posted because I
I'm
need to
having
go back
fun.
to school and
But
try
I
to
don't work
learn
in
how to do
Mississippi.
that.
I
No, I'm
work in
serious. I'm
Georgia.
not being facetious.
So
I'm
I don't work
saying
in Mississippi. I work
that's
in
a
Georgia and other
yeah,
but
but
places.
I do
Georgia,
think
Georgia is south except for Atlanta. Georgia is south too. But I hear you. And of course there has to be a shift in terms of the way people see themselves. Obviously there has to be a shift. But I just see us shifting and twisting and turning and being flexible and accommodating everybody. And where is
Mm-mm.
the grace for us?
No, I
Where's
don't.
that
I don't
grace for
accommodate
us?
fascists. I'm gonna kick their
Yeah.
asses.
Oh
I'm
no, I
gonna
don't
do everything I can,
accommodate
I guess,
fascists
to
at
get
all.
them
I
out of
fight
power.
fascism.
But the
Yeah.
people who are being harmed by the fascists, even the ones that wear them red MAGA hats, I'm gonna figure out how to make sure that they're not available to the puppeteers. It's the most I can do. If that's a lot of people ain't ready to do that frontline work of working with people who are racially illiterate. But
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well, and I'm not.
how
I
else
think we
can I
don't.
make my enemy weaker
Yeah.
if I don't pull his base that apart?
Well, but is that our job though
Do we have
to
a choice?
wait? No, let me ask you this: is it our job to reprogram or retrain white racists so that they're not racist anymore?
don't you,
I mean, because we
Jaribo,
have a
if
lot of
black
work to do
folks
in
could
our
have
own
gotten,
communities.
but
I'm
I'm
just
sorry,
saying.
Jaribo, if black folks could have gotten rid of white supremacy by ourselves, you know damn well it'd be long gone.
No, we can't. But we
That's what I'm
cannot.
saying. If we
And
could have
where
done it
are
by
white
ourselves, it'd
people?
have been
Where do you
gone. So
see
obviously, we got
Right,
to
but
figure
where do
out
you
how to
see
work
white
with other
people in
people.
this, though? Where do you see our white revolutionary brothers and sisters and others who are full of bullshit a lot because they don't take up these issues? We tend to take up the issue of race and white supremacy more than the white left or any of these
Oh,
supposed
because,
politically
but
conscious white people. They
but
leave
that
that work for us to do always.
but that doesn't mean they can't be persuaded, and that doesn't. I mean, I'm thinking of the Ann Bradens of the world. I
Oh,
have,
that Anne Brayton is a different breed.
you know,
Totally
I'm
different.
saying we don't even know.
Totally
I
different
mean,
breed.
matter of fact,
Yeah.
the reason that these Trump MAGA people are so panicked is because we got their kids. We got them with our music, we got them with our cool, we got them with our culture, and we're getting them at the ballot box. You know, the largest number of white youth between 18 and 29 voted against white supremacy than ever has happened in the history of America. And they're scared gritness about that. You know, and so it's not for everybody to work on that edge, but when you do, you're
That's what
weakening
I was going to say in the few
you're
minutes that we
weakening
have
them
left.
where they can't
I
wall
know.
they can't wall out their own grandchildren. They can't wall out their own gated, people from their own inheritances. I'm going after their soft underbelly. Because when they go back, they don't
And
go back.
I think there's a role for all of us to play in doing that. But when I look at like my capacity and my energy and
Yeah.
where I need to focus, when I see these young people struggling and dying, and that's where I got to be. I know that the other stuff needs to happen because we had this conversation years ago about going, and I know it has to happen because some of those people can be peeled off. I don't think a lot of them can. I think the narrative has gotten so much in their DNA that that's what they believe,
Right.
and the time that I'm going to take to do all what needs to be done is going to take a long time. So I just
So how
in
are we
the
going
few
to
minutes
defeat
that
white
we
supremacy without white people participating in its defeat?
no, I'm not saying, I'm saying what I
I
can
don't know how
do.
that's going to
There's
happen.
people
But I don't
who
think we
are,
can convert them to that. I think that it's the responsibility really of those who supposedly are class allies, white revolutionaries,
Yeah, but even though they're
and they're full
racially
of
illiterate
bullshit.
too.
They're not doing it, and they're secretly Zionist and racist themselves. So we don't really have that conscience that we used to have
See,
back
and
in the
Loretta,
day.
I'm not even saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm saying I don't think I can, given what I know about
Right.
where I am. But it has to be done. Somebody has to do it, and it's all part of the strategic look at where we're going to get if we got this vision of inclusion and diversity, which has been made to seem like it's something negative and dirty, but really that's how we're gonna get to where we need to get to. So I don't think we need to negate any strategies that's going to get us there. I think all of us have a role to play, but we need to know what that is, and we need to buckle down to wherever we are, plant our roots, and do the work.
Sure.
And yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And could I
yeah.
just invite people to help me because two of you have been with us in this struggle for so long with Schrock. We have two anniversaries coming up in December of 2026. Schrock turns 30 in September of 2026, and the Mississippi Worker Center for Human Rights turns 30 in December of 2026. And we're going to have a big celebration. We're going back to Jackson. That will be our second time being in Jackson for Schrock. We were there in 98 for the second Schrock. And now we're going back to Jackson, hopefully on the campus of Jackson State University.
Explain what schrock
And
is, because
it's
only
the
that we.
10th,
What is
10th to
schrock?
the
What is
13th.
schrock, Jariba?
Southern Human Rights Organizers Conference, and it will be from December 10th to the 13th in 2026. Rest assured, I will be reaching out to the two of you for special places, obviously, not just on the program, but thought processes as well going forward to create that agenda. So I just want to invite right now, all the listening audience, to watch out for more information on that. December 10th to the
Yeah.
13th next year. We started giving out flyers yesterday at that leadership event. They said, "Oh, 2 days from now, we got to be with you." I said, "No, no, next year, next year." The flyer says 2026, but there was a buzz, some excitement in the
Yeah, but
marketplace.
it's better to start now, get it on people's
Yeah.
calendars. So thank you, Loretta Ross,
Thank you.
Jaribu Hill. If you missed it in its entirety, it's going to be posted on JamalRogers.com and the YouTube station. So if you missed it, or even if you heard the whole thing but you want to go back and hear it, JamalRogers.com, and we will be seeing you on the battlefield. Thank you for
All
listening.
right.
Bye bye,
Take
y'all.
care. Thank you. Bye bye.
Do it on the night stop.